Latest edition of Stanko's Stance Instant Reaction here. Just got home from watching the movie The Lodge at the Alamo Draft House in Yonkers. And let me tell you folks, The Lodge, it's not a happy movie. And that's okay. The Lodge is a horror movie that centers around a soon-to-be stepmom who is trapped inside of a house with her fiance's two children. Snow and blizzard-like conditions force them to be isolated, and with tense relations between the two children and the soon-to-be stepmom, some strange, unique, religious, cultish actions begin taking place, which sets the whole movie into motion. The movie is a slow-burn psychological thriller directed by Servin Fiela and Veronica France, who I had not seen any movies of them before this. And let me tell you, they definitely have a unique ability to stretch out the tension and the suspense so that the ending definitely does leave you contemplating not only the plot, but contemplating the deeper moments. And it really just, it leaves you gut-wrenched because the ending to The Lodge, it kind of ends on a cliffhanger where you know what would happen if the movie went for another 3 minutes. But what makes it most haunting is that the directors force you to imagine that terror rather than putting it on the screen. And sometimes your imagination, having to think about it yourself, is worse than seeing it put onto the screen. So the movie is very good, though. It stars a very, very small cast. Richard Armitage, Riley Keough, as I believe how you pronounce her name, Jaden Martell, people will know him from the movie It, and Leah McHugh. Jaden Martell and Leah played the two children. Riley Keough plays, I need to learn how to pronounce her name, but Riley Keough plays the stepmom, and she's the one who goes through the biggest psychological transformation. It's revealed kind of at the start of the movie in the expositionary phase that she was the only survivor of a cult that all committed, a religious cult that all committed suicide to be closer to God at the behest of a religious leader. She survived. She's going to marry Richard Armitage, the father of the two children, and this was meant to be a bonding experience over the holidays of those two getting to know their stepmom. And safe to say, things don't go according to plan. There's quite a few things that happen that kind of go toward the pivotal moment where there is a major plot twist or plot revelation, maybe the more proper way to phrase it. But the movie's tone and atmosphere they're more important than the plot of the movie, I would say. And that may be a bit of a detriment because that big plot revelation, it doesn't hit you over the head like a frying pan where you go, oh, crap, wow. It is instead more of you kind of realize that you're already waist deep in waters you didn't even know that you were wading in. It's kind of like oh, wow, all right, I'm already in the pool, rather than a cannonball, oh, crap, let's dive right in to see how this is going to end. But that's also okay because the slow burn is like walking into a very, very cold pool and easing your way into it, knowing that you're going to eventually have to dunk your head to get fully accustomed to the terror and to the coldness that's around you. And that's what The Lodge does, is by the last 20 minutes, you really have no choice where your head's going to have to go underneath that water and you're going to have to embrace the insanity that the ending of this movie kind of brings forward. It's really, really haunting because the last act of the movie is basically the two kids kind of realizing that the Pandora's box that they opened, they cannot put a lid on anymore, and they have trapped themselves in a certain type of hell, which there is no escape that they can see. And so they kind of wrought their own misfortune, and they're trying to survive it and outlast it, but it's no guarantee that they're going to do so. And it's an interesting thing because at the end of my viewing at the Alamo Draft House, they had a Q&A with the directors and some of the staff and some of the cast, And it was interesting because the directors made a point to say this is a horror movie without any good guys or bad guys. It's all middle of the road. There's no hero. There's no straight bad guy. There's, as they call it, everyone's human. They all make mistakes. They all make mistakes. They all make choices, and they all deal with the choices. And so it's an interesting thing where you don't know who to empathize with at the end, because some of the actions the kids do is incredibly mean, but then some of the actions that Grace, the name of the stepmother, fairly ironically named per se, some of the actions she makes, you kind of are shaking your head at as well. So you don't know where to lean in terms of who to empathize with, and that makes it even more scary because you can't tell where this movie is leaning toward in terms of who's going to make it out at the end. And it grips you that way. What's also interesting is that getting the screenplay, the directors, they rewrote it, and I guess this screenplay was a lot more playful when it was first originated by Sergio Cassi, Casci, but Severin and Veronica took out a lot of the dialogue, added a lot more of the atmospheric terror of it, and took it down a different road, which I think definitely is its benefit, because the movie doesn't answer questions for you, and it's a lot of, in its quiet moments are when it's at its most effective and when it's at its most tense. One thing that you could tell about this movie is that it's filmed on set. They filmed at a lodge in Montreal in the middle of nowhere, and you could really tell with a 360 atmosphere, which allowed for the directors to film this in sequence, which I think really, really helped Riley in her progression as playing Grace, and the madness that she kind of sees herself go into. Kind of allows for the actors to feel where the story is going to go and kind of to have their own sense of freedom in exploring that. I guess these directors are a fan of improv, and Jaden Martell said in the Q&A that he doesn't like improv, so it was unique for him and different for him because he's not used to it in a horror movie, especially. He's used to having the lines he has to say and perfecting those lines, but they encouraged him to kind of be improvisational to do so. And I think that freedom definitely carries through because there are some moments that are truly terrifying, and there's this, I don't want to spoil it, but there's one scene involving Jaden Martell and the angle at which the shot is taking, and he does a certain tilt of his head looking down toward a certain character, and it's going to stick with me to the very, very end. And I'm still thinking about it now, and it haunts me. So overall, though, the Lodge is very good because it's the atmosphere and the suspense and the long, drawn-out, slow burn of it that make it so good, and that it leaves you with questions at the end. It burns in the isolation that you feel when you're alone, cut off from all sorts of technology or whatever. So it's not a movie for everybody. It's not a movie that you're going to leave happy. I'm telling you, as the credits rolled at the end of The Lodge, nobody talked in the theater because they were all kind of just taking in what they just saw. And it's not an easy watch. I don't know if I'm ever going to watch it again, but I am glad that I saw it once because it's definitely a well-made movie for what it is as a psychological horror movie. I got a lot of Hereditary out of it, not because it's as good as Hereditary. It's not. Hereditary is one of the best movies of the decade, let alone horror movies. But there's certain things that are very similar, like the use of dolls and the use of the idea of creating a doll house that is incredibly lifelike and using that as transitions between different settings and different characters. There's literally a scene after they show a real-life setting in a dollhouse that cuts directly to a doll's head being hung out a window, which if you've seen Hereditary, there's a certain character that hangs her head out a window, which leads to a pretty big moment in Hereditary, and it immediately evoked that for me. They pay other direct homages to certain Arctic isolation movies like John Carpenter's The Lodge, The Thing, and it all comes through. This reminded me a lot of I believe it's The Apostle on Netflix as well, in terms of, and I think it's called The Apostle on Netflix. Apostle, it's just called Apostle. But another thriller horror movie. that is about a religious cult that leaves you with a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, and that's okay, because in the end, sometimes the things you don't know that terrify you the most. But so it reminded me a lot of that. It reminded me of Apostle. It reminded me a little bit of Hereditary and The Thing, and there's a bunch of stuff. So, but the movie is very, very good. I give the movie a B+. Stanko rating of a B+. I'm still thinking about the movie now. I'm going to be thinking about it for a while. The Lodge is just a very, very well-made movie. It's well acted throughout. There are really no dull moments. I think the only detriments to it are that its plot revelation moment, the big plot twist, if you will, that kind of pushes the third act through, doesn't hit as hard as the directors want, because the atmosphere and the tension kind of overwhelm it. So the story aspect falls a little bit by the wayside. But again, it works for the movie that it is. But that suffers, I think, a little bit. I thought the movie was maybe a little bit too long. I could have done maybe 10 to 15 minutes less. Maybe dragged a smidge in the middle. But still, again, these are all nitpicky things. The movie itself is still very good. I give it a B+. And yeah, I recommend that everyone go see it if you want to go see a really good horror movie that's really gonna punch you in the gut. Another hilarious aspect of this is that I turn on my phone walking out of the movie theater, and the first notification I get is my friend Steve Colzo notifying a friend's group chat that Mookie Betts has been traded. And as a Red Sox fan, culmination of walking out of the theater, not knowing what to think of a really traumatizing horror movie, to go along with the Red Sox making a stupid trade, trading away a top 3 player in baseball for what looks like nickels on the dollar. You know what? It was not a great night for Jonathan Stanko in terms of his emotional well-being. But I still recommend The Lodge to everybody. It's a Stanko rating of a B+, and expect a written review on stankostance.wordpress.com in a couple days.